Tonight on Crossfire, new chaos in Ukraine, threats from Vladimir Putin, and new concessions from a former president.
Vladimir Putin changed.
On the left, Van Jones. On the right, Newt Gingrich. In the Crossfire, Representative Karen Bass, a Democratic member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, and Senator Ron Johnson, a Republican on the Foreign Relations Committee. Is President Obama stumbling or leading on the world stage? Tonight on Crossfire.
Welcome to Crossfire. I'm Newt Gingrich on the right.
And I'm Van Jones on the left. In the Crossfire tonight, we've got two opposing views on foreign policy. Well, now look, folks, we've got a lot of stuff happening in the world, but get ready. It looks like all spring and all summer, the Republicans are going to take every problem on the world stage and use it as an excuse not to come together, not to solve America's problems, but just to blame President Obama. The Ukraine, Benghazi, whatever it is, same script. Obama's making America look weak. No, you guys are doing that. That's what you're doing. America looks weak when we jump into these dumb wars that we can't pay for or win. America looks weak when we got an opposition party at home that won't help the president in the war, in peace, overseas, or at home. Now, Newt, I think you guys just need to make it official. The GOP has now become the Get Obama Party. That's what you guys are.
I'd have more sympathy for your case, except that Obama makes it so easy. So I think it's going to be an interesting debate tonight. In the Crossfire tonight, Democratic Representative Karen Bass of California and Republican Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin. Let me turn first, if I might, Congresswoman, and I can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm going to end up quoting Maureen Dowd of the New York Times. Now, I have to confess, this for me is a new start. She said, especially now that we have this scary World War III vibe with the Russians, we expect the president, especially one who ran as Babe Ruth, to hit home runs. Now, as you know, he was quoted, I think, in Manila as saying, well, he gets occasional singles.
Right.
Don't you think that standing up to Putin requires Babe Ruth more than a guy hitting singles? Isn't this really the big leagues?
Well, I think it's the big leagues. I think President Obama is used to the big leagues, and I think that his leadership on the Ukraine has been strong. The Europeans now are stepping up to the plate, and clearly it's going to take all of us. It's the sanctions from the United States, but it is also the sanctions from the European Union.
If this has been strong,
yes,
what would weakness look like?
I think weakness would look like doing nothing, and I think what the president has done has been strong, and I do think he's showing the leadership, and I think that the Europeans will follow.
And do you think it's had any impact on Putin?
Oh, I do think it's had impact on Putin, and it's had impact on the Russian economy, okay? Now, whether Putin is willing to sacrifice the Russian economy, that's the question. But I do think it has absolutely had impact on the economy.
I agree with you. First of all, it's so good to see somebody here from California. But listen, I am so tired of this weak versus strong thing, and I want to get you into this, Senator. It seems to me what we hear from Republicans, they want more belligerence, more saber rattling, more United States leaning over getting other folks' business. But guess what? The American people don't agree with that. They agree with the president. Let me show you this. If you look at the actual numbers, only 20% say we should be more active, even in the face of all this stuff. 47% of Americans are saying, listen, we can't solve the whole world's problem. We should be doing more stuff at home. Why are the Republicans out here demagoguing on this stuff and the American people aren't even with you?
Let me first challenge what you said in your opening comment, that we're blaming President Obama. I personally blame Vladimir Putin. But the fact of the matter is, we have shown weakness. We haven't shown the strength in resolve. No, we have to show strength and resolve. Vladimir Putin is not going to listen to words. And the president says all kinds of good things, but you have to back those with action. He will only respond to action. So no, what we should be doing is we should be honoring the request of the courageous people in Ukraine. We should provide them some defensive weapons to change Vladimir Putin's calculus. The other thing we should do is we should open up our energy markets. We're flaring. We are wasting so much natural gas. We ought to capture that. We ought to build pipelines. We ought to export that to Ukraine and
like
Europe.
To say that because my understanding is that, especially in terms of the liquefied natural gas, Those contracts are underway, but it's going to take them about a year before they come online.
This president can move those along a lot quicker, and he's not doing that. He's not doing that.
I don't believe so, because the contracts are underway. It does take a while for it to come online. You know, my Republican colleagues, and both of us are in the minority, every time something comes up, all roads lead back to Keystone, and I'll tell you, even if Keystone was being built today, it would take a year for it to come online.
Right now, the roads lead back to allowing those permit applications to move forward. Have you heard the president announce those permit applications to move forward? That'd be a powerful signal right then and there. We have to recognize what gives Vladimir Putin strength. It's his oil and gas reserves, Europe's dependence on it. We need to break that dependence. We got to break that monopoly.
You know what? Even if Keystone was up and running, it's still a drop in the bucket in terms of.
And I'm talking about the LNG terminals that will signal what we should be doing.
But it is moving forward. It's just going to take a while.
Let me carry stuff further. And by the way, I'm for a very aggressive energy policy. I think it would be a factor. But I think the reason the president's getting in trouble is that you can follow the polling numbers that Van had. 47% of the country wants a less activist foreign policy. About 19 or 20% wants a more activist foreign policy. The president has been trying to do both. That is, he doesn't want to use military force, but he draws red lines. He ends up getting us talking about all sorts of places, but not doing anything. Isn't there, you know, how do you have a activist, non-activist, interventionist, non-interventionist policy? You know, the Pentagon, for example, was even counting Kevlar vests as an offensive weapon. So they wouldn't send anything that was useful to the Ukraine. Now, you're either going to do things or not do things, but this talk without effectiveness, isn't that a real problem?
Well, I actually don't think that it is, and I do think that he has been effective, but it is a real pushback. I can tell you, constituents in my district, the last thing in the world they want to hear is us getting into another conflict. That's a real issue, and when I think of my Republican...
You know why that is, though? Because this president hasn't taken the time to explain why Syria is a national security issue for the U.S.
Hold on a second.
He has not taken the time to explain why Vladimir Putin's aggressive expansion does threaten our national security and the world order. He has not explained the American public.
He's been criticized for explaining too much.
Too much, exactly. You can't have it both ways.
He's deliberating too much. He just
He didn't say a word about Syria. All of a sudden draws a red line. And then, obviously, does nothing when that red line is crossed because he hasn't. It's an example of how this president has not led by explaining to the American people why these things are in our national interest.
Let me ask you one question. First of all, people want to go back and act like if he had bombed Syria that we would somehow be in a stronger position. We were bogged down in Syria right now. We'd be in a weaker position to deal with Putin, number one. But number two, if we were bogged down in Syria, you want us to have another land war over there?
You would have already changed Vladimir Putin's calculus. The reason Vladimir Putin's doing this is he can do it with impunity.
And what about George W. Bush?
What he got out of his aggression toward Georgia was a reset.
Well, hold it. The aggression under Georgia, that was with George W. Bush, who had just invaded two countries. So obviously,
with him, actually,
who's a lame duck president. The election was happening, and then President Obama came in and rewarded Vladimir Putin for that aggression with a reset. A reset button was actually awarded, and that hasn't worked too well.
Well, let me just say a couple things. First of all, my big disappointment with you and with your party is that there's not.
I can't imagine you just
is that there's not one thing that you guys have put forward that the president is disagreeing with. You don't want direct military involvement against Putin right now, do you?
I want us to provide defensive weapons, things like anti-tank weapons, to the trained members of the Ukrainian military.
Between the Republicans and Democrats, the only debate between Republicans and Democrats right now in this town is how many sanctions and how fast, what's the speed of non-military involvement.
We want to see President Obama announce that he's going to allow those applications for those LNG terminals, those permits to proceed forward. That'd be a powerful signal.
The terminals are moving forward. It's just going to take them about a year to come online. So
it is going back to Keystone. It would be like the Keystone XL pipeline. That permit has taken 5 years.
No, but
we fought in World War II in a shorter time period.
I was just going to make the same point. I mean, we're now moving at a pace that is so bureaucratic and so cumbersome that if you're Putin, you're sitting there thinking, the president probably doesn't mean whatever he just said. The Congress probably won't back him. The American people don't want to get involved. So You know, if I end up
But if we had the Keystone Pipeline, Putin would fall down and beg for mercy.
We're using that as an example of just his lack of leadership and the fact that I don't believe he's going to allow those
what I think is really important when we're going to sit here and talk about Ukraine, we do have to continue to talk about Europe. So Europe's role, the EU's role, this is not all about the United States and
we should certainly be trying to get those folks to spend more.
First of all, I think Europe will always be weaker than we are. So if we're weak enough, they'll be really weak. But next, I'll tell you where former President Bush is wrong about Vladimir Putin. And we want you at home to answer tonight's Crossfire question. When did Vladimir Putin take power in Russia? Is it A, 1994, B, 1999, or C, 2004? We'll have the answer when we get back.
The look of success just got easier. Joseph A. Bank Traveler dress shirts and sports shirts. Now 3 for $109. 100% cotton, wrinkle-free traditional and trimmer fits. A fantastic limited time value, 3 for $109. Through Saturday at Joseph A. Bank.
This is the first power plant in the country to combine.
Welcome back. Here's the answer to our Crossfire quiz. Vladimir Putin has effectively been in control of Russia for 15 years, since 1999. And here's a frightening thought. Under Russia's constitution, Putin could be in charge until 2024. In other words, he could serve with President George P. Bush or President Chelsea Clinton. But some U.S. presidents, including Republicans, keep underestimating him. Today, President George W. Bush, who once famously said he had looked into Putin's eyes and saw his soul, gave a new explanation about him.
Did you misjudge him early, or were you just trying to open the door?
I think he changed. And of course, a president should open the door and give people a chance, except for the despicable tyrants. And he was not, at that time, he was, it looked like he wanted to be, work with the West.
President Bush reflects our entire foreign policy elite in both parties. They continue to believe bad people can be good people if only we be nice to them. Putin has been Putin for the entire time he's been around. He was Putin in the KGB. He's been Putin since he started running the country in 1999. If we're going to deal with him, we have to see him for what he really is. In the words of former Defense Secretary Bill Gates, a stone-cold killer. Back with us in the Crossfire, Congresswoman Karen Bass and Senator Ron Johnson. And I think you feel like that's a pretty grim but maybe accurate view of Putin.
I do. I think it's rather scary. And I think some of the photographs of him show he looks pretty thuggish, although I don't think we call him that.
I think the only change is he's just been emboldened. He's gotten into that power, his head is expanding, and he's more dangerous now.
I would agree with you, and I do think it's because of the entire world, not because of President Obama, that he's emboldened.
You know, I'm very curious, because you were commenting during the break that you've just been in Ukraine.
Right.
And I'd ask you both of you, do you really believe if he's determined to be aggressive, that we can stop him?
Probably not militarily. From my standpoint, it makes no sense for Russia economically. Which just doesn't. So you really have a megalomaniac. You have an egomaniac in Vladimir Putin who wants the power and is willing to move forward. So I don't know how you do stop that, other than to potentially change his calculus.
Sure.
And hopefully he's rational enough to realize that his economy will suffer.
I love this conversation, because now we're actually trying to figure out something. But here's my problem. This has not been the conversation we're hearing from the Republicans today on the Hill.
You're just not listening close enough.
On the Hill, I think I heard it today.
You have too much of a filter. You just assume
I listen. No, actually,
we're all reasonable.
Benghazi is reasonable. Here's what I don't understand. Right now, we've got the entire eyes of the world focused on Ukraine, on what's going on there. It's the most dangerous part of the world. And your party is 1,300 miles off, talking about Benghazi on a different continent. Why are you guys so obsessed about that issue on a week like this?
President Obama and his administration shouldn't have lied to the American people for weeks on that. They should have been transparent, got the story out, got it behind
him. You never made a mistake.
And people, this was far more than a mistake.
You think this week the most important thing for the Republican Party to be talking about on national television all day long is Benghazi? Yes or no?
It's news when you have an email from Bed Rhodes, pretty well being the smoking gun that proves this White House.
This is a smoking
was a strategy. And again, you're the one that brought it up. I was happy talking about Ukraine. You're the one that brought it up.
But you know what? I do want to point out, because I think there's agreement here. The senator and I agree. I do think that Putin can be brought to his knees through the economy. So he has to make a choice. Does he want to invade Ukraine, or is he going to sacrifice his economy? And so we kick up sanctions and we increase to a sectoral approach, meaning the banks and the financial sector, and then the Europeans join in, bring his economy to his knees.
But we need to do more than that, because economic pressure requires rationality on his part. He might be rational, but he really will respond to action. I think you have to, like you say, you've got to provide defensive weaponry.
To quote my mentor, Bob Michael, I'm going to be the skunk at the garden party for a second.
Okay.
Putin is cutting deals with Japan. He's cutting deals with China. He's about to cut a very unique deal with North Korea that may involve a railroad from South Korea. He, I think, is in a position where he is anticipating whatever we're going to do. We haven't been able to change Cuba with sanctions that go back to 1960.
Well, now that Cuba's a whole other discussion.
But no,
We can talk about that
saying,
policy.
you look at a country that size, and I am very concerned. I just lay this on the table.
And by the way, that's the point. Sanctions work pretty good when it's asymmetric, when you've got a very small economy like Iran, like North Korea. Potentially, Cuba hasn't worked. When you've got an economy as large as Russia, it's, you know, it's a couple trillion, there's a lot of interdependencies. We'll never put the type of crippling sanctions, because it's a double-edged sword. It hurts the West just as much.
Make your point, though, about
Cuba. I was just saying that the world has not supported our policy with Cuba. We've had a blockade against Cuba for over 5 decades, and it just doesn't have the international support.
Do you think China, Japan, India, Iran are going to support the American sanctions on Russia?
Well, I don't think they would just support them because they're the American sanctions, but I do think when Europe weighs in a much bigger way, I think that it really increases the pressure.
Don't you think that as this thing develops, listen, right now Europe has been timid, it's not been that helpful, but you look at the scenes now, these are going to get worse and worse. Don't you think that at a certain point the Europeans do come around and the president, a patient hand of using sanctions, you don't start with your last card, you start with your first card. Don't you think that the calculation of the Europeans begins to change?
No, I don't think the Europeans will ever support the kind of sanctions that would actually change Putin's calculus. Now, we should
blame Obama
give him a try.
You think if Obama gave a better speech, they would do it?
Listen,
they would do something different.
My point about President Obama is he has shown weakness for 5 years. The world has seen it, and that's dangerous. The world actually does look for American leadership, and as they're witnessing this, North Korea's watching, Iran's watching, China's watching. They are all emboldened by our weakness, our lack of resolve, and that's after 5 years of President Obama. Who respects America more after 5 years of Barack Obama?
Let's go back to Bush and talk about how the world respected
I'd rather stick with the president.
Yeah, right. I bet you.
5 years.
But let me just say, I think what's really sobering and frightening about where we are right now, and you saw this a little bit as they started talking through what's going on in Ukraine today, is probably the only thing that would really slow Putin down is genuinely arming the Ukrainians. That is a big decision. We went through the whole Cold War for 50 years. And the Russians went into East Germany in 53. They went into Hungary in 56. They went into Prague in 68. We were always very careful. They have 1,700 nuclear weapons. And I just think this is the most...
But it wasn't arming those countries that led to the end of the Cold War and
that's
the
right.
collapse
It was eventually
of the Soviet
very
Union.
long-term collapse.
Right, and it was economic.
We may need to be thinking
right?
about a 20-year plan to deal with Putin, not a 20-week plan.
And I would tend to agree with you on that, and I don't understand why, if this is true, and I think I appreciate your perspective, where are the Republicans who are willing to play this longer game with this president? You talk about how weak this president is. I don't think this president looks weak to al-Qaeda. I don't think this president looks weak to Muammar Gaddafi. I don't think this president looks weak to a lot of people. But I think America looks weak when the Republican Party attacks this president when he goes for peace, when he goes for war, when he tries to do overseas, when he tries to do stuff at home. You attack. Where is the one area you're willing to work with this president on?
Well, first of all, the long game. What was the first thing I said we had to do? You look at this strategically, and we've got to open up world energy markets. We need to start exporting our natural resources, break up that monopoly. That's a long-term strategy. You're not going to get immediate results from that, but you mentioned Muammar Gaddafi. That was the White House saying that President Obama was leading from behind. That didn't work so well, and that's really behind I think that the whole debacle of that strategy in Benghazi was.
We're going to keep arguing after the break. First, we want you guys to stay here. We want you at home to get involved in this. We want you to weigh in on today's fireback question: can the United States prevent Putin from taking over eastern Ukraine? I want you to tweet yes or no using hashtag Crossfire. I'm going to give you those results after the break. Also, we're going to have the outrages of the day. Mine has to do with sports teams and their owners, but it's probably not what you think when we get back. We are back with Congresswoman Bass and Senator Johnson. Now it's time for the outrages of the day. Now, I am outraged that we're all outraged, but only about this Sterling guy. Who cares about him? What about the deeper racial problem in sports, the one that is staring us in the face every single game? Now, look, between baseball, basketball, and football, we have nearly 100 American teams, 100 teams. Now, except for one person, Michael Jordan, every single principal owner is white. But the folks who are sweating at the bottom of the pyramid every game are mostly people of color. Now, that's not 2014. That's 1814. And to me, that's the real outrage. Now, what do you think about that, Congresswoman?
Well, I think it's an excellent point. And you know what? I'm hopeful about the Clippers because you have Oprah Winfrey, you have Magic Johnson, and Magic Johnson has an interest in the Dodgers. Yeah. And so I'm hoping that they will be able to step in and take advantage of it.
You had Van with his big CNN contract.
I can buy a ticket with that.
My view is this will shake up the billionaire owners.
Good.
Some of the teams ought to watch the Green Bay model. Close to I own a share of stock. I think having a community-owned team is the senator from Wisconsin. I have confidence.
That'd be the Lord's team, right?
That's right.
Community ownership, I'm for that.
Okay, so on my side, Bill Clinton has always been self-aggrandizing and extremely loose with the truth. So even though it ought to be an outrage, it's really no surprise that during a speech this week he was self-aggrandizing and dishonest in taking sole credit for the prosperity of the 1990s. Listen to this.
In all the so-called prosperity of the 1980s, only 77,000 of our fellow Americans moved from poverty into the middle class. In the 90s, 100 times as many, 7.7 million people, did. That was policy.
In a way, Clinton is right. If he had not governed so badly in the first 2 years he was in office, Republicans would not have taken control of the Congress, and none of the necessary work would have gotten done. So if he wants to take sole credit for getting the Republican Congress elected in 1994, the Congress that forced him to reform welfare and balance the budget, it's just fine with me.
Okay, well, look, we don't have enough time for me to fight you on that one, so we're going to just let you have that one tonight. We're going to check in on our fire-back results. Can the United States prevent Putin from taking over eastern Ukraine? Right now, 17% of you say yes. 83% of you say no. My goodness. What's your position? Do you think that we could stop him or no?
Well, we got to change his calculus, but if he wants to roll, I mean, we certainly can't stop him militarily. And that's his choice, but we got to change his calculus.
I'll say 83% of the people agree with you on that. Well, look, I want to thank you, Representative Karen Bass and Senator Ron Johnson. This debate's going to continue online at cnn.com/crossfire, as well as on Facebook and Twitter. From the left, I'm Van Jones.
From the right, I'm Newt Gingrich. Join us tomorrow for another edition of Crossfire. Aaron Burnett Out Front starts right now. That was a good one.